Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on in to Fantasy Daily and welcome to the playoffs. Let's go. I am so stoked to be here with you all today. I am hoping that y'all are listening to me on the other side of playoffs, on the good side of playoffs. If not, it's okay. There's always next year. There's always playing for those consolation positions, the 4th and 5th and 7th and 8th, or whatever it may be that you're playing for. And even if it is the end of the year, if it's the end of the season for you, make sure you're still making moves. Make sure you're still being a thorn in the side of all your league mates and stuff like that, because that's what makes fantasy football fun. If you got number one waiver ad and there's somebody out there who's really good, you go ahead and grab him. Even if you're not in playoffs, you grab him. Make sure the other people have to fight with what's left. So even if you are out of the playoffs, make sure you keep going. Make sure you get your money's worth, especially if it's a paid league, and keep on playing. And remember that there's always next year, so keep following along, keep playing the games, maybe get into some daily fantasy now, which is what I like to do if I lose out in playoffs. But a lot of stuff that's going to happen from now until the next between now and the next season through the off season. So make sure that you're keeping up. Stay in tuned here on Fantasy Daily, because I'm going to keep you updated throughout the off season and especially these next few weeks, which are huge. A lot of big news today, a lot of stuff going on right before Week 15, the first semifinal, or no, whatever, what would this be, quarterfinals? Yeah, the quarterfinals or whatever it may be, but we're getting into it now. So now for the next few weeks, we're going to have a ton of work to do, ton of things to get through, so let us get right into it today. We got waivers, we got Week 14 rear view, not the review, the rear view, because it's over now. Week 14's over. It is playoff mode. We are going to go playoff mode, straight playoff mode. And one thing that I like to mention, I mentioned it on the live show, on my TikTok, blah, 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 all that stuff. If you don't follow me on TikTok, blah, 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 in the description. So I said it on my TikTok where we were talking about, the Week 14, and then all of a sudden we get into playoffs and there's a mentality shift where a lot of people get a lot more nervous when it comes to their roster, when it comes to managing their players. They get very, very nervous. They get concerned with how they're going to move their players around, and they, tend to be a little bit more skeptical of picking up waiver wire ads and free agents and stuff like that. You got to adapt or die in fantasy football. So make sure that you're moving some pieces around. Make sure that you're staying vigilant, and, remember that it's an every week game. So somebody like Rashad Penny out there, who we're going to talk about soon, you might be too nervous to play him. You might be wanting to play somebody like Clyde over him, or, whatever it may be. And every single week you're concerned and you're just putting in the people who you know best, and you're not willing to, kind of go outside the box a little bit, go outside the norm. But during the regular season, we always go outside the norm, especially to win weeks. So make sure in the next few weeks you're winning weeks, especially staying vigilant, staying fluid, adapting instead of dying. Let us get into the news. Speaking of adapting, let us get right into the news, because COVID is on the rise again, and we hate to see it, but it is true. It's the winter now. It's getting colder, and this stuff spreads quick. So COVID is on the rise again. It's going to be a wild playoff ride. Make sure you're staying in tune. Make sure you're, not just here, but even with your notifications and everything. If you have them on your phone, turn those guys on. But yeah, stay tuned here as well, because I'm going to be trying to pack all of this in and updating you guys every single day as much as I can. But CMC has tested positive for COVID. Now, CMC himself isn't going to do us much. It's CMC, and he's, not on there, but there's COVID in that locker room. So CMC is tested positive. That's Carolina. Odell Beckham Jr., which I got the OBJ Giants jersey on today. We'll talk about that in a minute. He also tested positive right after Tyler Higbee and Jalen Ramsey did. So OBJ now tested positive. He's got a chance to be, good to go for next weekend. But the fact that the outbreaks are happening and it's spreading, we got to stay tuned onto this. The Browns, especially, this is a big case of it. They have 8 positive tests on their team. They have Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper right now, who are on COVID protocol, so that's really sad to see for both of them. But also 2 offensive linemen and Takk McKinley, the defensive end. So a lot of COVID cases on the Browns locker room. Several other teams with COVID IR in their locker rooms, Kansas City being one of them. So throughout the week, we really have to be on top of it. I'm going to try to be on top of it as much as I can, have people in the mix, as we talk, with Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper, you start to look at Donovan People-Jones, Harrison Bryant. Baker Mayfield seems to be okay for now. But those moves that we might have to make, last minute and adjust, because it is the playoffs, we have to adapt or die. And it seems like there's going to be a lot of this. There's going to be a lot of this the next few weeks, so you got to stay on top of it. I'll do my best to make sure I cover as much of it and don't miss anything throughout the days. Especially during playoff push right now. It's playoff push, so we're hyper-focused, making sure that we're following everything. And speaking of following everything, the Week 14 injury rear view, there is a ton of injuries. There's my coffee. There's a ton of injuries, implications that we need to talk about. Now, they're not direct injuries, which is a good thing, but they're things that we need to monitor throughout the week. So the big one, the number one that everybody's probably concerned about is Lamar Jackson. He suffered an ankle sprain on that shoelace tackle. But it's considered to be a low ankle sprain, which is not as bad as a high ankle sprain would be, and it seems to be a low-grade, low ankle sprain. So he was just beat up for the game. Some rest, some ice should do him good, and he should be good to go for this week. But it's still something you need to monitor, because if he does sit out this game, Tyler Huntley's going to be involved, and if Tyler Huntley is involved, then you're going to see a lot of Rashad Bateman targets, I expect. So Devontae Freeman's probably going to be another good name that you want to throw in there if he starts. So it all depends, but you got to make sure that you're vigilant on that, staying updated, and doing your due diligence as well. Get some Twitter notifications, updates sent to your phone. Even if you have a Yahoo Sleeper, whatever app that you use, they all have notifications that you can sign up for. So make sure you turn those on. And me personally, I have notifications literally everywhere. I have every player notification in Sleeper and all the other apps and all the other I have notifications for days, so you can fine-tune your notifications to exactly what you want, and through these next 3 weeks, you definitely should be doing that. DJ Moore, he is day-to-day with a hamstring. I do expect him to be okay, but this is a hamstring injury, so being the vet that it is a hamstring injury, it could go from bad to worse immediately, very quickly. So it happened in-game. It's not good. So keep an eye on DJ Moore. Robbie Anderson might be worth a look if DJ Moore is to sit, because I do think that Cam Newton and Philip Walker, whatever, they do like Robbie Anderson quite a bit. They like DJ Moore, obviously, but it just seems to be, Robbie Anderson getting quite a few targets there. So keep an eye on that. Robbie Anderson might be worth a look. Sip time. Kareem Hunt, he is likely out for next week. They already said that he has the ankle injury as well. They have the Saturday game at 4:30. They already said he is out. So if you're one of the managers who had Nick Chubb this week and you're kind of worried, don't worry about it. He'll be right back into the fold. Aaron Rodgers said he suffered a setback, that his toe definitely does hurt worse. This was right after the game. So I was kind of cooling on this opinion a little bit, where I was like, well, if it's right after the game, maybe it's like the pain is lingering right now. And then he goes home and he's like, oh, it's not so bad. But the next day they said it's still lingering with him and it's definitely worse. But the last resort is surgery. So it seems like he's going to play this year out. And with some quarterbacks, you worry about that. With Aaron Rodgers, I don't. Me personally, with Aaron Rodgers, I roll him right out. He's ready to go. I don't care. And he's going to keep being Aaron Rodgers. You roll him out every single week if you got him. Melvin Gordon has a sprained thumb. He's likely to be okay with it. He's likely to be able to play with it. It's Javonte season still. Gordon season gets his toe touchdowns as well, but I think it's still Javonte season. You can keep rolling both these guys out, and I think they both have huge upside every single week. And I do think that there's going to be plenty of, within the next 3 weeks, I'm sure at least one or two of them will go to Javonte. So Javonte's going to get a lot of work. Melvin Gordon's going to keep getting work as well, but I do think it's still Javonte season. I'm not coming down off that cliff just yet. Josh Allen is in a walking boot. Early speculation is that he has turf toe, and we did get the update this morning that he is day-to-day. So got to keep an eye on, quarterbacks that are coming off the waiver wire, and, there's not many out there that I'm going to be able to talk about in length today, because I think I talked about them a little bit on the live show. Let me see here. I know that I had a couple of them that I wanted to talk about, but it was really, really a short-handed list. So we'll get into that when it comes to the waiver times. But Josh Allen's in a walking boot. Early speculation is he has turf toe. We expect him to play. He's day-to-day, but being that he is day-to-day, that means there's a lot of concern there from the team that he might not be able to play. So if the team is concerned that he might not be able to play, then I'm going to be worried that he's not going to be able to play. Now, you got to go out there and at least grab something off the waiver wire to kind of take a look at. Austin Eckler, he has the ankle injury that they say is not serious. So Austin Eckler, this ankle injury that came during the game, Little bit worrying, but they say he's okay. I expect him to play. They do have the short week, so I think we do have to look at Justin Jackson. It's hard. I want to spend a waiver on him. We're going to talk about that soon. But Justin Jackson is one of those people that I think really needs to be on your team, especially for these next few weeks, because this is what we see with these running backs is that they do go down, they miss time, and their backups can be week winners. So we're buying weeks here. At this point, we're buying weeks one at a time. Keenan Allen is expected back for Thursday night's game against Kansas City. I thought I'd mention that update. Deandre Swift, I wanted to talk about this real quick, because I do think that is likely that we see Deandre Swift hit IR this week, and that's going to finish him out for the fantasy season, week 15, 16, 17. It's 3-week minimum on on IR. So if he's on IR and he's done for the season. So the Detroit backfield becomes very messy to me. I really would only want to play Jamal Williams back there. But like I said, if you have DeAndre Swift, I would probably prepare for the idea that he might actually be going to IR. So if you have a high up waiver wire pick, you should probably grab Rashad Penny this week, especially if you're worried, hoping that you have DeAndre Swift, next week and the following week. I really, really doubt he plays again this year. Terry McLaurin, he's been placed in concussion protocol. He put up a bubble on you, which makes you sad, but he should be okay next week. He gets to play against Philly. James Conner and Nook were shaken up after the game last night. Nook is getting DeAndre Hopkins is getting an MRI today, but Coach Cliff Kingsbury says that they both are just a little dinged up after the game, and it was just a, hard couple of plays because they were snapping to the line every single play of that game. They almost had it. Okay, so Week 14 rear view. What I'm going to do here is I'm kind of just going to talk about some points from Week 14 that I really want to bring up as we're going into the playoffs and as our perceptions kind of change week to week to week to week. So see that I got the OBJ jersey on today. If you guys follow the show, you know that I have been not kind to OBJ this year. I've never been kind to OBJ as far as a fantasy standpoint. And for the first 12 weeks, I was still on that ledge. Even when he made it over to the Rams and he caught the touchdown, I was like, well, it's a scheme touchdown. And then you see inside the NFL, you see the way that Sean McVay and OBJ are clicking and the way that they're kind of communicating with each other. Another game where he's scripted into the red zone where it's a play designed just for him. So I got to take my perception and rise it a lot more here with Odell Beckham, whereas I thought he was completely touchdown dependent and you never knew when those touchdowns were going to come. Now, I believe that OBJ is still pretty touchdown dependent in order to not kill your week, but those targets are coming, and they're going to be there 2 or 3 times a game, if not at least once a game, for Odell Beckham. So I think he rises up a lot in my way, my kind of specs, my rankings and everything like that week to week. I'm going to look at him a lot more because I do think he has a massive touchdown upside that not a lot of players do offer when you're looking at it. When you're looking at a Rashad Bateman type player, certain players that just need that touchdown in order to be effective. Robbie Anderson, as the aforementioned. So I think Odell Beckham is going to be above those guys all the time now because you can really kind of hope for 2 to 3 chances for him to get a red zone target or a play designed for him to get into the end zone once a game. So got the OBJ jersey on. I still love OBJ. I've said that all the time. I just don't trust him in fantasy, but I think you can trust him a lot more now, and I think he's going to be a lot more in the mix when it comes to these conversations. Moving on to the Carolina backfield because I'm still getting a lot of questions about this. I got a lot of questions about this on my live show yesterday, actually, before the game went live, before the game went on Monday night. A lot of people are asking me about Chuba Hubbard and what to think, and I am very, very worried about Chuba Hubbard and the Carolina running backs. I really don't want to dive into that if I don't have to. So Chuba Hubbard salvages his day with their touchdown, but between the quarterback competition there with Cam Newton and Phillip Walker, you don't know how it's going to be. You don't know that the game script is ever going to move towards them. You don't know if they're never really going to be in a positive game script where they can run the ball a lot. So personally for me, I'm really out on Chuba Hubbard. That was the week where you could actually start him and then be worried. And now that you can't start him, I'm very, very worried. Now that you couldn't start him in that game, I'm very, very worried. So I'm really off of Chuba Hubbard. He's one of those players that I'm still going to roster, but I'm Rashad Penny over Chuba Hubbard rest of the season already. So me personally, if you have him, you're going to keep him on the bench. You're not going to drop him. But if you can grab a Rashad Penny, I'm way more confident in Rashad Penny rest of the season than I am Chuba Hubbard. Very, very worried about the running back situation over there. Seahawks. Talk about Russell Wilson. He came through for you this week. It was a nice game to see out of Russell Wilson. But I think, like we were saying on the live TikTok show last week before Sunday's game slate, I thought Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett really was the recipe the week before in week 13, where I was like, Russ and Lockett is the formula for Russ. He's got to keep going to him, and if he keeps going to him, he can get cooking a little bit. So Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson, I think they're locks. Well, Russell Wilson not so much, but I think Lockett is going to be a lock for the rest of the season, and I think Rashad Penny might be as well. So Russell Wilson's going to be really game dependent, and you're going to have to, it depends on who you're streaming. But I think Lockett especially is super solid for the rest of the season. I think he's going to continue to get peppered with targets, and I think Penny is better for the offense. So if those two and Russell Wilson are all together, I think that's going to be a great combination. You're going to be able to really trust Tyler Lockett and Rashad Penny the rest of the season. So Pete Carroll already said that Penny deserves the shot at the starter role, and we've been waiting for this for Rashad Penny. His rookie year, he was good, but just wasn't his time yet. Then the following year, Chris Carson was kind of beat up with some injuries. We were hoping it was Rashad Penny time. He got beat up with some injuries, so it looks to be Rashad Penny time now. And I know he's kind of got some injury concern as well, but I don't think he carries as much injury concern as, say, Chris Carson. So I think this is really Rashad Penny's time to go. I know Alex Collins will be back, but this is the Rashad Penny we've been waiting on. So if you can get him for 3 weeks, those last 2 weeks are really, really juicy matchups. So love Rashad Penny. You can see where the week 15 waiver show is going to end up. But love Rashad Penny. So Hunter Renfro. I've been talking about Hunter Renfro a lot, and I really just want to reiterate before we get into week 15 and everything that I think Renfro is a top 10 wide receiver for the rest of the season. He has 33 targets, 20 receptions, and 1 touchdown in the last 3 weeks. And even with Darren Waller coming back eventually, I do think that Renfro is going to be just the de facto guy in Derek Carr's mind. You see first down, Renfro, second down, third down, goal line, fourth and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Must-have situations, it's always Renfro that Carr is looking for. So with the fact that he's being hyper-targeted and he's becoming basically the focal point of the offense, I do think that Renfro is top 10, top 15 wide receiver the rest of the season. I think he's going to be super solid for you because they're going to be in must-win games where they absolutely have to have it now. So Las Vegas should be throwing the ball a lot. Josh Jacobs might take a hit here, but I think Renfro is wicked solid the rest of the season, and if I have him on my lineup, I'm starting him over quite a few people the rest of the season. So we'll talk about him more that we go. Just kind of, going along with that same theme that, we're getting into the playoffs. We got to start adjusting our, rankings accordingly. And if Hunter Renfro is one of those guys that you still think is, lingering around the Tyler Lockett maybe role, I don't think he is. Or both of them what they used to be. I don't think they are. Pollard. He's coming back next week, but after seeing what Zeke did in this game against Washington and what all of Dallas did, and not for nothing from what I saw, Dallas needed Zeke to get something going in order to salvage a couple of those drives there, and he just couldn't do it. So I'm willing to stake my flag, and I'm done arguing about it. I'm done beating around the bush. Pollard's better for the team than Zeke. So I think that Pollard is going to be, one of those people that you can slide into your flex spot or running back 2 slot on a week where you need him, or if you got COVID or injury concerns. Pollard's going to be one of those players that I think is going to be super involved after what they saw this week with Zeke. I think Pollard has to be involved. So my biggest takeaway from this week actually is going to be a weird one for you guys, but if anybody knows me personally who's been playing fantasy with me for a long time, I'm a big fan of wide receivers, big fan of that position. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to be a wide receiver in football, in the NFL. So I like to watch that position. And try to call my shot on those players way beforehand. I remember Devontae Adams across from Jordy Nelson. I was like, Devontae Adams is already better than him. I thought the same thing with Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks. I'm trying to think of the other ones. Justin Jefferson I've been talking about for a long time. Calvin Ridley was one of them. So usually those guys that are like kind of under the radar and end up, being a kind of a stud. Chris Godwin was another one. So I'm just trying to kind of show you players who that there was one year that we weren't really talking about them at all. And then the next year they were just super studs. The following year they were stars. So this one, I don't know if it's going to be a star, but I do think that he's going to be a fantasy producer this year, rest of season, and we're going to be talking about him a lot going into next season, and that is Jalen Guyton. And I believe that Jalen Guyton, when Keenan Allen returns, he holds a good amount of value, and he actually hurts Mike Williams' value more. And I think he actually might hurt Keenan Allen's value just a little bit in the target share, because I think Jalen Guyton is somebody that Justin Herbert feels he can rely on, and he's proven he can be relied upon. So I really do like Jalen Guyton a lot. Mike Williams is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season, and I highly doubt, with the way that Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton, the young guys, are playing with Justin Herbert, that they're going to re-sign 28-year-old Mike Williams to a $5 million a year deal. He's going to go somewhere else. So I expect to see a lot of Jalen Guyton in the next few weeks, and into the offseason for them. The fantasy, when fantasy football ends, I still expect to see a lot of Jalen Guyton, because they're going to be able to sign that dude for cheap, and he's going to be a stud for the team. So I like Jalen Guyton a lot. I think we're going to be talking about him next year a lot too as well, right across from Keenan Allen. So not saying that Keenan Allen's cooked and it's Jalen Guyton's show. I'm just saying that Jalen Guyton looks really good. You look at the way that the contracts are structured and the team looks for next year, and you really can't argue. So love him. Let us get into waivers. Got a short show for you today, guys. Going to do a lot of work this week. Going to make sure we're punching through, making sure that we're getting those fantasy lineups set for this week, because it's going to be a tough one. And being that it is a tough one, I tried to put together a good list here for you of people that you can be confident in, but I will give you a little bit of upside in saying that these are the players that I would spend my waiver on. So if you have a waiver, right, you're still going into playoffs, you still have 2 more weeks to win after that, whether you not have the bye week. I'm talking from the perception of you're playing week 15. So if you have to win 3 weeks, okay, you got to win out in order to be the champion. So in order to do that, you got to consider your waiver wire as well. You might look at this week and go, okay, I need to grab somebody this week so I have them for the rest of the next 3 weeks. It's not always the case. There might be somebody better next week that you're going to need, and the player, whoever you grab, might not help you as much as you think. So a lot of people were asking me, do I spend my waiver pick on Craig Reynolds? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because if Craig Reynolds gets picked up, let him pick him up, because I'm sure there's 3 or 4 other running backs on the waiver wire during the free agent period where you can grab them without spending your waiver, and they're probably going to return the same value. So for me personally, not a big fan of Craig Reynolds, not going to spend my waiver wire ad on him, but he is an example of a player that I wouldn't be willing to spend my waiver wire ad on, because I'm confident I can get somebody else tomorrow once the free agent signing period begins. So I wanted to specify that. If you guys are worried and you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I always answer my YouTube questions first, but be like, hey, I really, really, really need a running back. Here are my options. Would you grab this guy over Craig Reynolds tomorrow, or something like that? So if you guys have any of those questions, I definitely understand how those things come about. But be very careful, be very vigilant with your waiver wire ad. And here we go. These are my waiver wire ads for week 15 going into the playoffs after sip time. All right. Number 1, first and foremost, is Rashad Penny. Now, this is my number 1 waiver ad overall. Why are my numbers sitting like this? So Rashad Penny is my number 1 waiver ad overall. He looks to be the lead back. Pete Carroll says he has a chance to be lead back, and this is the Rashad Penny we've been waiting on. We've been waiting on the full lead back Rashad Penny, because we know he has the talent. We saw him put up 2 touchdowns in this game. Granted, it was against Houston, but I think that Rashad Penny, those last 2 games are super juicy. This one, he's an okay start in, so I think that as the weeks progress, he's worth the waiver wire ad, because I think in the next 2 weeks following, he could be hugely involved, massively involved, have a good target share with Russell Wilson. And like I said in the previous segment, I think Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson, and Rashad Penny are a unit that you see a lot of. DK will still get his, but I think DK is a worry going into the rest of the season. We'll talk about that more as the weeks go on. But Rashad Penny, absolutely my number 1 waiver wire ad. I think you should definitely go out and get him. My number 2 waiver wire ad would be D'Onta Foreman, and I do believe that he is under rostered right now. Not enough people rostering D'Onta Foreman. He bullied that first drive I know it was against Jacksonville, but he bullied that first drive, and as soon as he bullied that first drive, he basically got the rest of the game. Jerry McNichols got a little bit as well, but Dontrell Hilliard took a back seat, and it was immediately straight to D'Onta Foreman. So I think D'Onta Foreman is a good add this week. If you're super desperate at wide receiver, you could do much worse. So running back. So I do like the add of D'Onta Foreman this week. The next one who I definitely think that you should get on your team because of injury concerns that we're already seeing, and that's Justin Jackson. Now, Austin Eckler should play Thursday, but if he doesn't, Justin Jackson becomes a massive, massive add to the team. He's got a good schedule. Austin Eckler missing time. You're going to see Justin Jackson, one of those people, get a lot of that work because they're not just going to move away from the run and go straight into throwing. So that's basically one of my handcuff ads that I would be willing to spend my waiver wire ad, where I usually don't spend my waiver wire ad on handcuffs. So Justin Jackson is a whole different story because he could be completely part of the game plan 100%. And I know a lot of people are like, Larry Roundtree, this and that. I don't think they're going to lean on those the newer guys like they would Justin Jackson. He's been there for a couple years. He knows how to play. So I think that they would, really lean Justin Jackson if Eckler were to miss time. So grab him if you got room. If you're desperate at running back, you should probably grab one of the other guys first, but Justin Jackson should definitely be on your team. My last one is kind of one that I'm just throwing in there because I know a lot of people are desperate this week, and as much as I don't like to do this, I know that there's really some people that have absolutely no choice, and that's running back Royce Freeman, and that's because he's playing with everybody in Houston. I don't like the carousel over there. Rex Burkhead had a good week, and then he took a little bit of time off. That's where Royce Freeman came in. He was a good back. So me personally, I don't think that I'm going to add, God dang it with your low power mode. I don't think I'm going to add Royce Freeman if I don't absolutely have to. I'm not spending my waiver wire ad on him, but if I were to be in a position where I absolutely need to, there's nothing left on the waiver wire, even Rex Burkhead's gone, everybody's gone, that's when we're looking at Royce Freeman. So you might have no choice. You might have to do with what you got and, do your due diligence throughout the week. Hopefully there's some names come up or whatever and we can discuss them. Stay tuned, stay plugged in, and make sure that you're grabbing those names when you can. And make sure you follow my TikTok because I do like a lot. I do a lot of videos where like news comes out right away, and I try to get the news onto TikTok immediately, or I'll tweet it out. So if you guys have Twitter, make sure you follow me there as well. I try to do all that stuff pretty quickly. That way, you guys have the news first, and you can make the changes in your league before your league mates do. Speaking of which, actually, funny story. I actually think I updated one day about Elijah Mitchell. And I sent the update to TikTok, made the video. It took me about 5 minutes, made the tweet, and then didn't realize to go to my league, and I lost out on Elijah Mitchell because I was too busy reporting it instead of doing it myself. So just a funny story about that real quick. So moving on to wide receivers, the aforementioned Jalen Guyton, I think he is a really good add if you're hurting at wide receiver. If you need a flex option this week, I think that Jalen Guyton's a really good one. Another one that you should check for is Cole Beasley. Emmanuel Sanders is going to be out this week, so if Cole Beasley happens to be on the waiver wires, I think you should definitely go ahead and grab him. Rashad Bateman, we're going to talk about him because if Lamar Jackson does miss, I think that Rashad Bateman is the benefactor. Tyler Huntley liked to throw him to him a lot. He really doesn't have a connection with Marquise Brown downfield, which you really need for Marquise Brown. So I think if Tyler Huntley plays, it's a really bad hit to Marquise Brown. But I think both of them can be started still. You still roll them out, but I'm very worried about Marquise Brown if Tyler Huntley plays. But I think that Lamar Jackson has a real chance to miss this game. So if he does, Rashad Bateman's going to be, worth the start in this one. Next would be Amon-Ra St. Brown. Lots of targets. He plays against Arizona this week. Obviously, he's not Cooper Kupp. He's not going to put up 30 points. But I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of those players that can be peppered with targets. And if he gets peppered with targets, he's worth putting in your lineup. So he's actually my number one waiver wire ad. I would rather have him over everybody else. So I would list it Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Guyton, I would go Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cole Beasley, Jalen Guyton, Rashad Bateman. That's how I would go there. But I do really like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Lots of targets. When you have that much volume, it's worth it. My only tight end out of the week this week is Hunter Henry because he's really far under the radar. Not many people talking about him, but he gets a good matchup. Everybody else at the tight end position, I'm willing to stream after waivers clear tomorrow, and we'll talk about that. All right, last but not least, we got our defenses. San Francisco gets to play against Atlanta. Dallas gets to play at the Giants, and Miami gets to play the Jets. So those are my 3 waiver wire ads for defense. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me right to the half an hour mark. Everybody, it's week 15. I will be back tomorrow. I'm doing a lot of number crunching here. We're going to get those playoffs and eventually those trophies. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you all tomorrow. Take it easy.